Hello and welcome to this mindfulness video for the Stuart Low Trust. My name is Katie. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to be talking about mindfulness, obviously. We're also going to be talking about an important, probably the most important part of mindfulness. So if mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment, then the without judgment part is probably the most important part of that. So the reason for this is that, for example, if you are suffering from anxiety and you're feeling very anxious, you may feel that actually you're very aware of the present moment. You're very aware of feeling anxious, and in fact, maybe it's all you can focus on. The problem is with that kind of awareness is that we are tending to add layers of judgment and struggle. And therefore suffering on top of what we're experiencing. So we talked about this a little bit last time about how we tend to kind of push things away that we feel are unpleasant, and the effect that that can have is to make those feelings stronger and to make us suffer more. So mindfulness is about accepting the present moment. So that's where the without judgment part comes in. So judgment is something that we all do. We all judge, and as human beings we are constantly making judgments. And this can be really helpful. So as human beings, it has ensured our survival as a species, for one thing. So it's taught us to judge whether something is a threat to our lives, and it's part of the fight or flight response, which you may have heard of. If you haven't heard of it, please look it up because it's very interesting. And so we can judge whether something is a threat to us is very, very important. The times when judgment and judging is not so helpful is in things that are a little bit more complex. So I'm talking about maybe human beings. We can be very judgmental about other human beings, and about ourselves, which can be very destructive, really, and unhelpful. So it's a really important part of mindfulness, is accepting and non-judging, and that includes our whole experience. So it's not about judging, because then it's another layer of struggle. It's about stepping back and noticing our judgments that we're making all the time, and noticing what happens when we're judging, noticing the effects that has. Because a lot of the time when we're making harsh or critical judgments about ourselves or about our experiences, then that can really add to our struggle, our suffering, our anxiety, and get in the way. So for example, if I were to experience anxiety, which I still do sometimes, and if I were to tell myself, well, I shouldn't be feeling like this because I'm a mindfulness teacher and I'm supposed to be zen and very calm all the time, then what I'm doing is adding a layer of struggle and not accepting how I'm feeling. Whereas if I were to actually accept that actually I'm a human being as well, I'm allowed to feel like this, then the sooner that anxiety I can let go of it a lot quicker, a lot easier. And it's not easy. It's not easy because we're quite attached to our judgments. So acceptance is an interesting word, and I'm just going to tell you what it doesn't mean when I talk about acceptance with mindfulness. Acceptance doesn't mean being resigned to something. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean letting people treat us badly or anything like that. It simply means accepting the reality of any given moment. That's all it means. So it's recognising what is happening and then distinguishing that from our thoughts and our reactions about what is happening. And that's where a kind of our space lies, and our peace is in that, between what happens and our reactions. And the more we practice mindfulness, the more we notice our judgments, our reactions, and the more choice we have about how we react. So for example, this is just to illustrate how our judgments can really affect our experience. So I'd like you to imagine two people on a roller coaster sitting side by side, and they're obviously having the same external experience, so they're on the same roller coaster at the same time, but they're having very different internal experiences. So the first person might be screaming in pleasure, so they like being a bit scared and it's really exciting, and the second person might be screaming through fear, and they really are not enjoying it, they want to get off. And the difference between their experiences is really what they're telling themselves, their judgments about the experience. And there could be a lot of different reasons for that. So the first person probably telling themselves like, oh, this is something like, it's really exciting, I love this. And the second person will be making judgments like, this is horrible, I hate it. And you can kind of see the extremes of those reactions, and how in the first person it feels like excitement, the second person it feels like fear, and it feels like suffering. And a lot of us have very different reactions to things that happen to us. So mindfulness and acceptance are accepting the reality of the present moment. And it's not about, as I said, resignation. What tends to happen when we accept the reality of the given moment is that it actually puts us in a more powerful position to change things if we can. Because we are not getting in our own way, basically. We are not adding those layers of struggle. We're not fighting reality. Because when you think about it, fighting reality is a complete waste of time, because it is the way it is in this moment. And how we kind of process that and work with it is really key to how we feel. So it's very powerful. It's not easy. It does take practice, and as human beings, as I say, we get caught up in judgments and suffering, a lot, and that is part of being human. And the key with that, of course, is to accept that as well. To be mindful that we are human beings, and we are fallible. So I'm just going to read this quote actually. This is from Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if anyone's heard of Eckhart Tolle. I'm sure quite a few people have. So he teaches mindfulness. He wrote a book called The Power of Now. And he said, acceptance means you allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling at that moment. It is part of the isness of the now. You can't argue with what is. Well, you can, but if you do, you suffer. So I think that sums it up quite nicely. So when he's talking about the isness of the now, he's talking about what is, basically. I don't think isness is actually a word, but we'll give him some leeway and not judge him for that. So that's what I talk when I talk about acceptance. We are talking about accepting reality. And going back to judgment, a really helpful antidote to judgment, especially when it comes to people, is compassion. If you've ever attended any of my workshops, you might know that this is something that I bang on about quite a lot. It's something that's very important to me personally. So compassion, when I talk about compassion, I mean kindness, non-judgmental, acceptance of ourselves and others. And this can be incredibly powerful. And again, this can be very, very challenging. Some people it's a lot easier to have compassion for. When people treat us well, it's very easy to have warm and kind feelings towards those people. But it's very difficult to have those kind of warm, compassionate feelings towards people who have treated us badly. And this is it's quite a deep subject, it's quite a complex subject, so I'm not going to go into it in too much depth. But compassion is a really good antidote to judgment. And one of the most difficult parts of compassion is compassion for ourselves. It might be that we are very good at being kind to other people and giving and generous, but we can tend to forget ourselves in that, or we just are very judgmental about ourselves, very harsh on ourselves, in a way that we wouldn't be with other people. And part of practicing mindfulness is to be aware of that and to notice when you're doing it, and to really, the first step in letting something go is to recognize it, is to notice it, and that's what mindfulness is about. It's not about, really forcefully pushing something away, as we've talked about. And compassion is not about seeing things, seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. It's actually about clear-sightedness. We see things as they are in all their complexity. So I'm going to read I've got quite a few quotes for you today. I find that people really sometimes better than me at expressing things, so I'm going to borrow their words. So Sharon Salzberg is also a mindfulness meditation teacher, and she said, "Sometimes we think that to develop an open heart, to be truly loving and compassionate, means that we have to be passive, to allow others to abuse us, or smile and let anyone do what they want with us. Yet this is not what is meant by compassion. Quite the contrary. Compassion is not at all weak. It is the strength that arises out of seeing the true nature of suffering in the world. Compassion allows us to bear witness to that suffering, whether it is in ourselves or others, without fear. It allows us to name injustice without hesitation, and to act strongly with all the skill at our disposal." So I think that's a really good illustration of what I was saying about compassion and acceptance are not about just sitting back and doing nothing. When we accept reality, we recognise exactly what's happening, then it puts us in a more powerful position to change it. And another quote that I really like, and this is about compassion towards other people and ourselves as well. So this is by a chap called Ram Dass, who I believe died fairly recently, I think maybe this year or last year. And he was a kind of Buddhist teacher, I believe. And he said, "When you go out into the woods and you look at trees, you see all these different trees. And some of them are bent, and some of them are straight, and some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. And you look at the tree and you allow it. You appreciate it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light, and so it turned that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all that. And you're constantly saying you're to this or I'm to that. That judging mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. Which is lovely, I think. It illustrates it really well, because I think that we do have that in us to be non-judgmental and to allow things to be as they are. And this is about cultivating that part of ourselves. So, yeah, it's always a work in progress though, because there are people and there are situations and things that happen to us that make that incredibly difficult. So it's always a work in progress. So there is something that I wanted else to say that I wanted to say about self-compassion. So what tends to happen sometimes is that when people are very compassionate towards other people, is that they can forget themselves. And sometimes people think self-compassion means selfishness or narcissism, which actually it doesn't mean that at all. It just means like it's a complete circle of compassion. So basically, as Jack Cornfield said, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. And I've also got a Jack Cornfield longer quote that I'd like to read to you because this illustrates what I'm saying really nicely. And he said, living with compassion does not mean we have to give away all our possessions, take in every homeless person we meet, and fix every difficulty in our extended family and community. Compassion is not codependence. It does not mean we lose our self-respect or sacrifice ourselves blindly for others. In the West, we are often confused about this point. We mistakenly fear that if we become too compassionate, we will be overwhelmed by the suffering of others. But this happens only when our compassion is one-sided. In Buddhist psychology, compassion is a circle that encompasses all beings, including ourselves. Compassion blossoms only when we remember ourselves and others, when the two sides are in harmony. So I think he says that perfectly, really, that compassion is about, the balance between ourselves and the world around us and other people, and treating ourselves and others with compassion. And being kind to ourselves, and being gentle. As mindfulness is a very gentle approach. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about the non-judgmental part of mindfulness. Just something to bear in mind, just noticing when you're judging, and the effect that has on the way you feel. Especially if you're judging your experience, you're judging your anxiety, and you're getting anxious about your anxiety. And just noticing that can help you let go of those layers of struggle and suffering. So I think we'll do some practice now. So I thought today that we would do another short breathing meditation and then followed by a listening meditation. So the idea, I think we spoke about this last time, about the different ways that we can practice mindfulness, and one of those ways is to incorporate the sounds that we hear into our meditation practice. And this is also a good way of noticing our judgments as well. So I'd like you to get yourself as comfortable as possible, whether you're sitting or lying, just whatever feels comfortable to you. And I invite you to close your eyes or just lower your gaze to the floor. And just bringing your awareness to the fact that you are breathing right now. And your breathing is happening all by itself, without you having to make any effort. And you can just observe the gentle rise and fall of your stomach and chest. Rising gently as you breathe in, falling gently as you breathe out. And as best you can, just allowing your awareness to rest on the experience of each breath and each moment. And when you find that your mind has wandered away from your breath, you may like to take a moment to congratulate yourself for having noticed. Because when you're noticing, you are being mindful. And just letting those distractions or thoughts fade into the background once more. Bringing your awareness gently back to your breath, to this moment. And then when you're ready, I'd like you to begin to shift the focus of your attention to any sounds you can hear inside the room or outside the room. And as best you can, just allowing any sounds to wash over you. Knowing that you don't need to get involved with those sounds. You can just notice them. Notice those sounds as they come and go. And noticing that some sounds are louder than others. And some are more in the background. Some sounds are constant. Some come and go. And I'd like you to notice any thoughts or reactions you have to the sounds. Any judgments you make about the sounds that are happening. noticing that you like some sounds more than others. And just noticing this, holding your whole experience in awareness with gentleness and compassion. And once again, when you notice that you have got caught up in thinking and you've forgotten to be aware of the sounds you can hear, just notice those distractions and then let them go. Bring your awareness gently back to those sounds. And just noticing if there is any space between the sounds, any silence. And just breathing with what is. Breathing with the reality of each moment, just as it is. Knowing the more you accept it and accept the reality of this moment, the more at peace you will feel. And if that reality includes not being able to accept this moment, then allowing yourself the compassion and the kindness to accept that too. Just allowing your awareness to rest on the sounds you can hear for a few more moments. And then gently bringing your awareness back to your breathing, to the feeling of each breath and each moment. And then when you're ready, just beginning to open your eyes Have a stretch if you want to. And just sitting quietly for a few minutes. Okay, so I hope that you noticed your experience of that meditation and that you got something from it. I'm just going to read one more thing, and this is from a chap called Bob Sharples, and he wrote this about meditation. Excuse me. And he said, "Don't meditate to fix yourself, to improve yourself, to redeem yourself. Rather, do it as an act of love, of deep, warm friendship to yourself. In this way, there is no longer any need for the subtle aggression of self-improvement, for the endless guilt of not doing enough. It offers the possibility of an end to the ceaseless round of trying so hard that wraps so many people's lives in a knot. Instead, there is now meditation as an act of love. How endlessly delightful and encouraging." So that's a nice little piece there. And kind of illustrates what we were talking about last time about meditation not being a fix for anything. And obviously illustrates what we're talking about this time, about compassion and love and kindness towards ourselves. And just a note about the reference to self-improvement in that quote. So there are many types of self-improvement, and I'm sure many of them are very, very helpful. So if that helps you, then go for it. And I would say that about anything that helps you. Keep doing it if it helps. But what he's talking about there is this kind of endless pressure that we can put on ourselves to be better than we already are, and how that can sometimes get in the way of actually moving forwards and achieving what we want to achieve. And that kind of sums up what we've been talking about in this session quite nicely. So before I go, just a reminder to subscribe to the Stuart Low Trust YouTube channel, to check out the SLT website at slt.org.uk. Also, if you want to, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, and yeah, hopefully I will be doing another one of these videos very soon. And at some point I will be appearing in person in a live workshop for SLT again, hopefully soon. Until then, I wish you all the best and thank you for joining me today. Thank you.